In today's episode, I'll be giving my reaction, recap, and review of the first season of Apple TV's hit show Severance. So let's dive right into Severance, Season 1. Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the dub cast. Now, with Severance, this show has been on my list for a while. During the football season, I was mostly paying attention to football games, not doing TV shows. So now I'm catching up a little bit. There's a review for The Bear season 3. I also watched Mandalorian season 3. It was good. A couple other shows to catch up on, but with the scuttlebutt of everyone in their pretty much everyone they know is watching Severance, I was like, I might as well move this one up the list. I've had this on my list since 2022 when it first came out. I heard good things, thought it was an interesting concept. This first season, man, it was pretty good. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I have some problems with the ending just because they must have known they were renewed for a season 2 because of the way they ended it. And I haven't allowed myself to watch season 2 until I podcast about season 1, so I'm not, leaning into spoilers, like pretending what I know what's gonna happen. I only have watched season 1. So in this episode, I'll go through an episode by episode recap and reaction to everything that I thought was interesting throughout, major plot points, stuff like that. So overall, though, I like this season. I think, if this was just a standalone season, it was pretty good, but I know there's a lot of people out there saying, top blank show, whatever. Just based off season 1, don't hate me. I don't think this is like a top 10 for me yet. I don't think so. We need more. I mean, I know season 2 has been pretty good. I haven't obviously watched any of it, but that's going to be my next couple episodes once I finish recording this podcast. But I'm good on it. Like, it's a good show, but I'm not ready to put it in the upper echelon yet. I don't think on this is standalone season 1. I don't think this is. I mean, it's a good idea. Like, especially in a time where in 2025 where like television isn't really normal anymore. People are all on streaming services. I always like the shows that are able to rally people together and get them talking about the shows, like White Lotus right now. Game of House of Dragon. What else? I mean, it's like there's only a couple shows you can really name that like people sit down and watch every like Sunday or whatever, Thursday night. I think the show came out. I've never watched an episode live or right after it came out, just due to the fact that I started 3 years late. And I also know this is a terrible time to start watching the show because now I'm going to have to wait for season 3 with everybody else. But I might as well keep up with what people are talking about and actually know what people are referencing. I had a coworker who was telling me to watch the show forever. A really good friend of mine was telling me to watch this show. So it's like, gotta just hit send on the engines and let's get this through. So Season 1, Severance, overall, I don't really rate shows, but I thought this was a pretty solid show. I'm not going to assign a number or anything, but I think this was a good season. Looking forward to Season 2. I think it's slightly overrated in my opinion, just based off what Season 1 was. Obviously, Season 2 we'll get into. I've said that a couple times now, but yeah, we'll see what happens with Season 2. But right now I'm good on it. Like, I know some shows take a while to heat up. This will be one of the first shows that I'm actually doing multiple seasons for. I've done Survivor, Succession, but never know how the shows that come out in the past, not the present, will do. So we'll see how this video does. I mean, it doesn't really matter to you guys, but season 2 will be coming no matter what. So here we go. Severance, season 1, episode 1, good news about hell. So I like this play on words already. Now I'm like going back. This is the benefits of having watched the whole season going into it. Good news about hell, hell-y-are. Am I right? So yeah, episode 1. We're with Helly, who we don't know is Helly. She wakes up in the middle of an office and has no idea what's happening, and then answers the 5-question survey. I think this is a weird way to introduce somebody into the world of being severed. Like, your severed version just wakes up and all of a sudden you have to answer a 5-question survey. You're in an office by yourself. I know it's jarring to probably wake up. Like, I think the idea of having the walls kind of like, I don't know, accident proof, like there's nothing you can do really to hurt yourself or anything like that. I think that's a good idea. But besides this, like, there should be someone right there saying, you know what, like, this is what you're going through. You're a new person now, et cetera, et cetera. I don't remember the specifics of the question survey, but one of them is like, do you know what Kira likes for breakfast? I think I don't know. Maybe I should have read it, done some more research, or wrote down what the question survey was. But I don't think it's gonna end up being that important. So we meet her. We don't really know who that is. Then the intro sequence plays. I know a lot of people like this intro sequence. It's a skip for me. I don't really. I mean, I listened to the first intro sequence of a show ever, and then the last intro sequence of a show ever, unless it's like a really good one. This one I'm just gonna skip moving forward. So sorry about that. I know people on the beautiful TV Time app were raving about the introduction to the show and the credits and whatever. It's like interesting stuff playing out on the screen, but I'm skipping it. So we meet our main character of the show. His name is Mark, played by Adam Scott. He's getting promoted to become the supervisor of his division after Petey leaves the company. And we learn about the sever process, or just it's named here. We don't really know what it is. So we find out that he was actually the one interviewing Helly at the beginning. I like the timeline here in the first episode where it's like you see the action with Helly in the room, and then we're going like kind of rewinding to the point where Mark is interviewing her. So I thought that was cool, like him becoming promoted. We kind of get a little background on his story, and then we see them intersect, their storylines intersect. So I like that aspect of it. So Helly is one very rebellious, severed person. I'm not sure. I think it'd be interesting to see what other people were like when they first got severed, like their innies as they call them, how they reacted when they were first severed, because Helly is trying to leave this place for like multiple episodes, and then she finally calms down when like they all try to leave together. So her first instance is trying to run out of the staircase, and she's with Milchek, and it just turns into the same hallway. This place, man, the place where they work, the Innies, is crazy. It's just all white walls. Like this is, I know it's like meant to be probably a bigger omen to like corporate walls and whatever. And I do work a desk job, 8:30 to 4:30, not 9 to 5. But I understand what what they're trying to get at here. I don't know. I don't know why any of these Innies are still there. I mean, I know they can't leave, but it's like, dude, like that would suck a lot. And it's hard to think about those people as people on their own right. I know that's kind of like the whole point of the show, but that sucks. I mean, Helly's person hates it there, can't really escape at all. We'll get into that deeper in a couple episodes, but so we learn a little bit more about what Severance is. It splits memory between work and life. Now, I know people are saying this is like a reference to real life, but I feel like most people are mostly themselves. Like, of course, you act maybe a little bit different at work, but I don't think it's some crazy like, you know, switch of like, oh, I'm this person at work, I'm this person at home. Like I feel like they kind of bleed into each other. Here, I mean, I guess you can say the same thing. So maybe it's like your working life. I don't know. I thought that was interesting, but I wouldn't necessarily like claim that to be true. So while Helly was making her escape attempt, Mark was hurt in the process, and once he goes up the elevator, but comes back to his Audi self, they lie to him and say he slipped like replenishing a water cooler. So right off the bat, we're meant to not trust this kind of big conglomerate company that is Lumen, and they give him a gift card at a local restaurant to make up for it. Yeah, so don't trust Lumen. We have a girl coming to Mark's Audi's house. It is the anniversary of something. His former wife died, and she is going to take him to a dinner. This is actually his sister Devin and Rickon, and Rickon is not a fan of the severance process, but it comes up at dinner, makes a really awkward scene in front of everyone. And I feel bad for Mark's Audi in this whole season. Like he's just by himself, man. But yeah, that's another scene that happens. So while Mark stays over at Devin and Rickon's place, there's a random guy in the woods in a suit staring at Mark. And then when Mark leaves later on, the next day or so, this guy also appears at dinner. This is Petey, his former colleague who left the Severance macro data refinement team and is now out in the wild. And he gives him an envelope, is very like jittery about what's going on. He says, what I know needs to stay known, and it's not all as it seems. He leaves Mark an address to go for his answer to everything. Yeah, this was like, I mean, right off the bat, I thought we were maybe going to like slowly ease into it, but right off the bat, we already have Mark's Audi meeting Petey, who we never met before, so that was an interesting concept because we saw a picture of them working together. They were best friends at work, and then out of work, like kind of paints the picture for you. They didn't even know who each other were, so interesting there. And the big reveal at the end of this episode, I noticed they kind of do a big reveal at the end of every episode, is Mark's neighbor, Mrs. Selvig, is actually his boss at work. Um, she'll have a bunch of names coming up that I'll just go into, but for now we'll call her Ms. Selvig. So that is a big red flag that his own boss is living right next to him. Kind of takes a creepy interest into his life throughout the season, so I'm interested to see how that pays out. And yeah, so you have Mark's boss when he's severed is in Lumen, being his boss, but then when he's out of work, it's just his friendly next door neighbor who's older, pretends to be dumb and clumsy. Crazy, crazy. So as usual, I'll give my favorite and least favorite character of each episode. So my favorite character of this episode was Mark. I liked his vibe for sure. Just followed him around most of the episode anyways. He's our main character, so giving him the nod for this episode. Least favorite, I'm going Miss Selvig. I guess that she seems like she knows what's up and is scheming by living next to Mark. So that'll wrap up episode 1. Let's get into episode 2. Episode 2 is titled Half Loop. We begin this one with learning the ins and outs of the Severance operation, and let me just say, this looks awful. I hate blood, I hate drilling into a brain. Ugh! I couldn't stand this scene, I almost passed out. I didn't almost actually pass out, but I hate stuff like this. Even now I'm getting flustered, can you see? So, they explain what happened with the stairwell from earlier. When she goes in and out of the staircase door, her personality changes. So as soon as Helly goes out the staircase door, she turns into her outie self and is like, what am I doing out here? I need to be back at work. So she goes back inside. So it's a never-ending cycle of Helly's outie versus Helly's innie, which is a major conflict that will take head at the end of the season as well. So she's learning about the environment, the work environment, macro data refinement. She can't communicate with your outside self at all. Nobody can communicate with your outside self at all. This is like, I don't know what the word for it is, but your outside self controls your inside. Like your inside self has the inside people have no control. The innies, they are just stuck at work 8 hours a day, and that's it. They wake up, it's 8 hours on the elevator, 8 hours off the elevator, and you're right back at work. Like that's crazy absurd. So we have Mark already breaking protocol in episode 2. He removes the group photos of Petey. This makes Milchek unhappy. I haven't talked a lot about Milchek, but he's kind of just the leash, basically the leash of the employees, making sure that they do everything that he wants. No breaking the protocol, no, doing extra stuff that you're not allowed to. He's kind of the guard dog basically for the company, like keeps an eye on them, make sure they're not doing anything wrong, make sure they're doing everything right. So this makes him unhappy with Mark by doing that. And then we have Helly, once again, is rebelling against the system. She decides to quit and then doesn't even make it up the elevator because we have Grainer, the security guard, who's, this team of 3, Grainer, Milchek, and Koble. Yikes, bro. I don't want to mess with those 3 people. They put the right 3 people in that position. So Helly, this is basically her whole season arc, is just trying to quit. Right now it's even light for what will happen later, but she doesn't make it up the elevator and will be working there stuck once again. So Mark is actually on a date now outside with a new girl. The birthing, I don't know what this birthing house is. I don't know if this was the thing where I guess people rent out a birthing house to give birth to their kids, which is what Devin, Mark's sister, does. And the birthing nurse is someone he sees on a date. And he is a fan of Severance, so when he sees the anti-Severance protesters outside of the date, outside the restaurant, he pushes back on them heavily, gets up in their face. I would never do this. I don't know why people like to cause conflict and cause protests. I get it, I do, but it's like I don't want to be involved in those scenes personally. I think I would just, I'm gonna stop talking. So the next day he calls out sick. The stuff that Petey said to his outer self has been weighing heavily on his mind. Seems pretty easy to call out sick. It's like, oh, my stomach hurts. It's just like calling out every day. They're not going to come check you, although maybe they will. I feel like they don't, but Milchek is the one who answers the call, so Milchek is definitely not severed. Obviously, Miss Selvig doesn't seem to be severed up to this point. So the bosses get to not be severed, and the workers do have to be severed, the lower like tier workers. So back in the office, Irving crashes out and sees something that looks like oil coming out of everywhere. He gets a paycheck deduction for falling asleep. I guess he's had issues falling asleep in the past. Still, even though seeing the last episode, I don't really know why he sees the black oil paint coming out like he does. Like, I don't really understand that part of it, but I guess maybe it's like symbolism for something. I don't know. Like, I've never experienced a visual sensation like that. Have you guys experienced visual sensations like that? I haven't. So that means he's falling asleep and he gets a paycheck deduction for that. We have Mark on the outside again. He's going to meet up with Petey, who has reintegrated, which means his inner self and outer self are the same person now. And he remembers a little bit from Severance, and he's now quote unquote sick. He's trying to map out the floor of the Severance office. He's trying to go conspiracy mode, figure out what was happening in the office because he doesn't have the full memory yet, just being recently reintegrated. So he has a recording of the break room where Mark is reciting a saying, and this is, the break room sounds awful. I don't know if any of you guys are actually working in the real world and have something like the break room, quit your job, because that's not normal at all. When they screw up, or they have to go into the break room and repeat 1,000 times, and Milchek is the moral judger of if you're trying or not trying to say it, if you're giving enough effort. Like, fuck that. I'd be out of there. I mean, I understand why they all want to leave. So in the hallways, Irving meets Christopher Walken, who plays a character named Bert. Bert works in interior design prior to his break room session, and while Irving is in the break room talking to the woman, which is named Miss Casey, she tells him about his Audi, what Audi likes to do. This is like saying someone's a Libra or a Gemini or whatever. It's like, your Audi likes to like have fun. Your Audi has friends. It's like, you could say this about anybody and it'd be true, but for those innies, it's like, oh my God, I want to know what I'm like on the outside, so any little fact, any little morsel, they like freak out, and Irving's like reacting, but he's not allowed to react. Stupid concept. I hate the break room. So the end of this episode, we have Petey. He holds up with Mark, I should say, because Petey was living in a greenhouse, which is questionable considering what we learn later on about his family. Why didn't he just go home? Well, I guess I understand why he can't go home, because, you're fighting the company, as a Prison Break reference there about Lumen. So while he's holding up with Mark, he vomits blood after getting a phone call. He sees a body double of himself, and he goes mute while on the shower floor, basically crashing out pretty bad. So this is a big warning flag that something bad happens when you reintegrate yourself. Dangerous trouble here, so watch out, Petey. This is not a good start. Only episode 2, and he's like crashing out pretty badly. So my favorite character in this episode is Helly, for trying to break the Matrix. I thought that was a W, and she didn't even really get in trouble for it. Mark got in trouble for it, so she, is doing fine as of right now. Least favorite, I'm going with Milchek. Being a corporate asshole. I also think he's a double agent who isn't even severed. I knew. Episode 2, I knew early on. So that's enough with episode 2. Episode 3 is titled In Perpetuity, and we picked this episode right off where we left off with Petey last episode. He's starting this one off being a little bit worried about his former colleague Irving, and he's having trouble mixing both of his lives together. His indie self that worked in the severed office, and his outie self that is now just trying to exist in Mark's place, live alongside Mark. So Mark is leaving for work after harboring Petey for the night, and he sees Miss Selvig, who is de-icing her stoop with a blow dryer. I have never seen that done before. If that works, actually, I need to look that up and see if that works, because those stoops and those driveways and your walkways, I've eaten shit before. I'll hand up. We've all eaten shit on the ice, so any way to get rid of the ice. Little pro tip for you, the Ziploc bag, fill it with hot water, rub it against the windshield. I guess that works. I tried it once. Doesn't really work, but I saw it on TikTok. Anyways, I've never seen someone de-ice their stoop with a blow dryer. I don't want to say people barely use blow dryers because women mostly use blow dryers. I don't use blow dryers, so let me know out there if people still use blow dryers, but I've never seen that done before. So Last episode, I believe Helly had submitted a resignation request, and we pick up with her. It's denied. And yeah, we'll get into a little bit later about Helly's outer version and what that means. But, right now, her outer version does not want to quit at all, has no interest in that. So we have Miss Selvig, and once Mark leaves for the day, she is a key into his house, and she takes the gift that was set on his stoop, which was the gift from his sister and Rickon's new book. And what the hell is going on here? That she has a key to his house, she lives right next to him. Like, this is fucked up because his inner self will never be able to tell his outer self that his boss is Miss Selvig living right next door. So it's like the perfect setup, or so you'd think, for her to just go unnoticed and live right next. Like, that'd be creepy if your boss like lived next door. You don't even know who your boss is, so it's a fuck concept, obviously. But then she's going in your house, taking things off your stoop, and it's like, dude. So right on the outside of the office, on the outside of the office, she is talking to Milchek, and this is when I knew they're in cahoots for sure. They're both not severed for sure. So, nightmare blunt rotation. These two people who think this is a good idea, they must be getting paid very handsomely in order to want to proceed with this, stalk Mark, and just ruin people's lives. It's crazy. So, once Helly's resignation request is denied, she keeps trying different ways to alert her outie in order to quit. She writes messages on her arms. She swallows a sticky note, but apparently there's some sensor in the elevator that can just sense when you're doing any sort of message to your outside self. I'm calling cap on that. How could an elevator know that? I mean, I'm guessing they'd probably just have cameras on you at all times. I mean, we see in the security room they do, but in the bathroom, I don't know. I think there's still a legality thing in the bathroom, right? Where you're not allowed to have a camera in there, so I don't know what's happening. Mark kind of catches on to it too. I don't know if it was at this point or later on, a little bit later on, but I don't know. This was like, it just kind of, you put that there because there's no way to possibly get out. But I don't know. I feel like if you figured out a good way to take something out of the elevator, it would work. But I don't know. I think I need an in-depth explanation into the sensor that can somehow sense a message leaving out on you. I don't know. So we pick up with Selvig / we learn her first name is Harmony. She has a meeting with the board, and the board is this very ominous group that only speaks through a headset to somebody or a little speaker, which is crazy. They are looking for Petey. They're concerned about his possible reintegration, and they say something that's very key to, I think, the show moving forward. Severance is irreversible, and we saw that play out with Petey, with what his fate is in a couple of episodes. Next episode, actually. But severance being irreversible, I don't think that's part of the contract. I don't think something else that happens to Dylan, who we haven't even talked about yet, later on, I don't think these people knew what they were signing up for. I think, possible big lawsuit paying out for them if they want it in the future. Maybe that's like the season finale of the last season. I don't know what happens in season 2, so I don't know if they're going to do season 3 and quits. I don't know how many seasons realistic you can do of the show of the same concept, but what do I know, right? So Helly now is getting further and further into her ways of trying to get out. She makes another run at it by smashing the window of a door with a fire extinguisher, and I had one simple message for her. This ain't gonna work, sweetheart. I mean, you've tried everything. She's getting more and more extreme with it, but it's like, this still isn't gonna work, I don't know. I thought this was just like grasping at straws. So while Mark is going over his old pictures with Petey, probably reminiscing about how much he misses him and hates Helly R because she just tries to break out every possible second. There's a hidden message in one of the photos drawn by him as Petey also simultaneously crashes out in a real-life gas station. He sees Mark and then drops. So the innie version finds this drawing from Petey, and the outside version sees Petey literally drop at the gas station, and Mark is hiding a bunch of stuff in the basement just in case, and he hears a phone ringing, and that's where we leave off episode 3. So my favorite from this episode, I'll give it to Helly again. I had hope. I said she's going to find a way to beat the system, but then I wrote parentheses, probably not. So yeah, I think it's GG's for her. Least favorite was Miss Selvig / Harmony once again, creeping around Mark's house. I thought that was not chill at all. Her and Milchek, in my opinion, are just bad humans at this point, or playing at something else here. Maybe it's a salary, I don't know, but I'm not fucking with their vibe at all. So that'll wrap up episode 3. Episode 4 is titled The You Are. So we pick up this episode with Irving and Bert once again. I can't speak to if this is actually the beginning of the episode or not. I just start with my notes, so if not, fuck me, I guess. Anyway, so I said a weird connection, but there's clearly a camaraderie there between Irving and Bert. Now, I watch episodes by episodes, go through the comments on TV Time, look, we'll see what people are saying. A lot of people were speculating that they were husbands on the outside. We do learn of Bert's outside life, but they are not together. But inside this Severance Lumen world, they touch hands. And Irving's the one, you know, as for what Irving's storyline will be later on in the season, he's the one to be like, we got to chill out a little bit here. So thought that was interesting, but right off the bat, something's going to go down between these two. Helly is on the case. She's bored out of her mind. She finds Petey's map that Mark had found the last episode, and as per Mark says, they are not supposed to make maps, and he shreds it. Mark's innie, I don't know. He seems like kind of a corporate shill, but he'll pick up at the pace later on. So now Helly is going even further and further. Every episode is just like, what will Helly do this time to try and quit her job? So now she's threatening to cut off her fingers with parts of the printer unless she gets a video camera. And she submits a video to her Audi to resign, and her Audi once again denies her resignation request. Brutal. Either in this resignation request reply or the first one, she completely eviscerates her, but I think it was this one. Yeah, her Audi is not having it at all about this potentially leaving the job. We learn why later on, but yeah, really big dichotomy between her innie and her Audi. Her innie wants to get the fuck out. Her Audi's like, you're working, bitch. It's sad. So we learned the fate of Petey when he crashed out at the gas station. He died, and Harmony / Selvig / Cobell wants the chip from his head. They need it for research, and they need to find out if he was able to reintegrate. And during his funeral service, which Mark attends because he formerly worked with him, and Petey was able to introduce himself on the outside to Mark. Mark attends the service just kind of randomly on a whim, sees her there, and while they're playing a nice video for Petey's death, him playing guitar with his daughter, Selvig / Harmony / Cobell is drilling into his head during the service to get the chip out. Psychotic behavior. Like, these people, I said the company reference before, like Prison Break, these people are fucking crazy. It's sad. I mean, I don't know what they're playing at. I still don't even know what they're playing at all. So we'll hopefully find out more about what Lumen's really getting at here and why they're so insane about everything. Because on the surface, it doesn't seem that bad. You just go up to work, and then all of a sudden you're leaving work. Like, you basically don't have to work. It doesn't seem that bad. There's a lot to the case, though. So Mark has a moment of sadness at Petey's funeral, goes to visit his wife's grave, and Harmony / Selvig see this and assign a special wellness session to him to do. A lot of intrigue from her on Mark. Is she sweet on Mark? Whoa, I just cucked. I never even thought of that before, maybe, but I don't know. I think maybe she's romantically interested in Mark, especially with the episode 7 cliffhanger that we'll get to in a bit, but seems like she's got a little rooting interest for Mark. So Irving, on the outside of the office, is now connecting with Bert. He discovers that, contrary to what they believed before, there's actually more than 2 O&D employees, and Bert had lied to him. So there's actually like 6 or 7 of them. So Bert, having lied to them, sets Irving back a little bit. He's a little bit worried about what that means for his future. Mark, in his wellness session, sculpts a tree, and Dylan finds the book from Rickon in the conference room. And Helly is gathering up her materials. She gathers an extension cord, heads to the elevator, and attempts to hang herself in the elevator. Crazy end to the episode. I mean, all 4 characters are kind of doing something that represents their outside life. Irving, it's like not stalking, but like checking up on Bert, finding out more information. Mark, that tree, I think, was something that him and his wife Gemma had in common or something. I forget what the reference with the tree was. Dylan finding the book from Rickon. This will be a funny story of them all getting inspired by this seemingly terrible book that Rickon wrote, but it's an outside influence, so they like it a lot. And then Helly hanging herself in the elevator, like, whoa, man, that's deep. So she's going to potentially kill herself in the elevator to end off this episode. So my favorite from this episode, going to Mark. Even though he barely knew Petey on the outside, he still showed up for his funeral. Got super sad for him. Felt for Mark this episode, obviously with the loss of his wife weighing heavily on him as well. Least favorite goes to Cobell / Harmony / Selvig. I'll call her Cobell from now on because I think that's the name everyone uses for her. She drills into Petey's head after he died. I think that was too far, and her continued manipulation of Mark was pissing me off. So that's why Cobell gets my least favorite for this episode. So that wraps up episode 4. Episode 5 is titled The Grim Barbarity of Optics and Design. So, right off the bat, coming into this episode, what happened with Helly? Did she die? Is she okay? Is she alive? She seems to be okay. After coming back, the attempted hanging in the elevator. She's going to be back in a few days, according to Milchek. And they say this is Mark's fault for being on Mark's watch. What is Bro Grainer doing? That this is on Mark. Like, this is crazy that Mark has to babysit. Mind you, one of my bigger points of this whole season is they don't do jack shit. They never really work. But that's a point for a different time. But this is on Mark's watch. Like, I don't think this is on Mark's watch at all. That's just slanting narratives from the bosses. Thought that was fucked up. So yeah, Helly's gonna be okay. She'll be back in a few days. So Mark, in real life, finds out about the book being stolen from his house via Rickon and his sister Devin. He tells his sister about Petey and what's going on, and he's still thinking about what happened with Petey a couple episodes later after Petey died. That clearly weighed a lot on him. So glad to see his outer self is still thinking, like, did I make the right decision? What's really going on here? Helly makes her return after her attempted suicide. It's tough. I mean, she's like pretty shocked to be there. You know, her inner self just hates being there. So it sucks to watch. And meanwhile, Irving is on a side quest with Bert. He finds a painting of two departments seemingly attacking each other. Milchek dismisses it once Irving finds this. We find out later that this was planted by Milchek to put some distance between the optics and design department and the macro data refinement department, because the optics and design department find one of the macro data refinement team attacking them. So it's like a one-on-one talk. Cobell, now with Helly, the big incident that happened, she's trying something new. She'll have Miss Casey babysit her 24/7. Thought that was pretty suspect. Once you learn later on what's going on, but yeah, it's pretty suspect. Irving and Bert are able to find each other. Bert's like stalling in a conference room, waiting for Irving to just walk by, I guess. He said he was trying to make a joke. Dylan has been a big disapprover of this relationship between Irving and Bert. He's kind of fallen into the camp of just believing what they tell you, in terms of, he likes the little finger traps they give you. He likes the rewards they give you, even though they're like, my thing is, though, like, what do you want a corporate office to really give you? I know a lot of people out there think it's, like, stupid with the dance party and the, like, finger traps and the waffle party. It's like, what would actually make you happy? Like PTO, sure, but they're not able to do that. So I think it's like, it is what it is at this point. But he disapproves of their potential romance, and they catch on to the two different paintings given out in each different department. So once you start to put all these things together, it's like, man, this is going to be some trouble. Bert introduces Dylan and Irving to the rest of his department, the rest of the optics and design department. Mark tries to bond with Helly by showing her the map that Petey drew. She's not interested in it at all. This is his attempt to kind of, reclaim something with her, because she clearly has no interest in working here. And she runs away from him until they find a goat in the hallway and someone telling them they aren't ready to be taken yet, which is the goats. They get out of that room, and that's really all for this episode. My favorite from this episode is going to Mark. Tried his best to help Helly and is slowly catching on to what's really going on. Main character energy. Least favorite I'm giving to Cobell. Scheming heavily. I don't trust her. So that's it for episode 5. Episode 6 is titled Hide and Seek. And we start this one off with Cobell at home and in her basement. She has a shrine dedicated to the CEO / Kier. I don't even know what to say, dude. False idols. There's a whole speech for you on that. This was, I don't know. She's crazy. How could you worship? I'm not even going to get into it. People are allowed to do what they want to do. I just thought this was a weird decision from her. So back at the office, Bert is making moves on Irving. He attempts to kiss him. They have their own room now that they meet in, and it has plants in it. This is just their room only to meet and hang out. So a nice little budding romance happening between Irving and Bert. Devin, Mark's sister, has a very suspect interaction with the woman she met at the birthing retreat. So I didn't go over this. At the birthing retreat, she talked to a woman, kind of weird vibes, where she was like sitting outside of her house and was like, "Hey, I want some of your coffee. Let me come in." Because she was jealous of her being rich. I don't know. Anyways, so she meets her again at the park, and the woman at the park doesn't really recognize who she is, which we'll get into in a little bit on why that is. But yeah, little Devin side storyline. I don't mind it because it's going to lead into something bigger, but it's happening. So Devin has her eye out too because she knows some of the stuff about from PD too. So Cobell yells at Mark for all of the things happening around the office. A lot of tomfoolery has taken place. As I mentioned before, they don't really work. So they have their hallway privileges revoked due to Dylan and Irving's field trips, Hallie's field trips, Mark's own field trips. Like they're finding stuff they aren't supposed to be finding. They're really supposed to be just staying in their own little room and office. I mean, they have a lot of everything there. So while this happens, of course, the natural human instinct is to rebel. So he brings all of them to O&D and proposes a team up between the O&D department and the macrodata refinement team. So that's a nice little alliance of two. And for this, Mark gets sent to the break room, where he's going to have to repeat that phrase over and over again. Meanwhile, on the outside, Mark has another date with the birthing helper. Good for him. He was able to get back on his feet at the second date, where, that first date ended with him being very mean to the Severance protesters, and he gets a kiss after going to a weird, sketchy concert in the middle of a alleyway. I mean, I used to live near one of those places in school, so I get it, but I don't know. I feel like I would definitely not have gone to that concert. But the concert features June, who is Petey's daughter, and yeah, nice little like punk rock, scream in your face. Not for me. Mark does end up sleeping with the woman. I'm forgetting her name at the moment. I forget the name. But good for Mark. Everyone grieves in their own way. Takes a lot of time, some processes. So good for him for moving on a little bit, finding some happiness in his life. And we have Cobell now entering Mark's personal life in a different way, where she's now going to become the lactational consultant for Devin's new baby. Who is this woman? Like, what is she up to? She's a lactation consultant. She works at a shop. She works at Lumen as a boss. Like, who is she? What's her story? I hope we learn more about Cobell in season 2. So something crazy that happens was Dylan actually took a little card of something, which I don't know what this card indicated and why it was so important, but Milchek makes a visit to Dylan's home and wakes him up at home to ask him where he put the card that he stole from O&D was. He's in his closet, and he's like, "Oh, it was behind the second stall and behind the second toilet." But his kid from real life comes in and right before he wakes him back up, says "Daddy," so he knows that that's his kid. This is going to fuck up Dylan for a couple episodes, and it's starting to get real messy and real wonky. I think Milchek, kind of slipped up a little bit here by letting this happen. So definitely something that's super impactful. I mean, if you're only working by yourself in this office and you think you don't know anything about your home life, and then you see your own kid, it's like, shit, man, I'm trying to get the fuck out of there. So Mark decides at the end of the episode he's going to call back the cell phone that was left behind by Petey, and he meets with a mysterious woman who we don't learn the identity of quite yet. So my favorite from this episode, I'm going to Mark. Got a Spiker back this episode. Got a second date with that girl, finding out stuff on the outside about Severance. Joined in on the fuck Lumen chant that was taking place at the concert. And on the inside, he led the charge to go back to O&D. He's listening to his employees, getting a little bit rebellious on this innie as well. So least favorite I'm going with is Cobell. Why is she doing private research on Mark's sister, becoming the lactational consultant? Really creepy. What are we doing here? And I don't like whatever she had installed into the office as well. We don't really learn much about it, but there's a renovation taking place. So that'll wrap up episode 6. Episode 7 is titled Defiant Jazz. So we learn a little bit more about the lady who Mark met at the end of last episode. And she is a doctor who actually was the one to install the Severance chip specifically into Mark's head and seemingly everybody's head at Lumen. Also, another side storyline, the security guard, Grainer, was tracking down where Petey was getting this information from. They found it was at a university side building that has been abandoned. So of course he is here once Mark is in the building. He doesn't see Mark because the lady smashes his head or bashes his head in with a bat. Mark's really freaking out a little bit, like what just happened. This is like a wake up moment, bro, because real shit's happening. People are dying. Grainer is dead now. I mean, this chick's like some conspiracy thing. I'm sure we'll see more of her in season 2. But this, right off the bat, you're like, whoa, this episode. I mean, this episode was just kind of a mind-blowing episode. So he got up in the middle of the night while he was still with the woman from the nursing or the birthing retreat. And once he gets back home, he has to once again interact with her because she's still sleeping in his house. And she wakes up, and when he comes home and is like, what were you doing? I've been awake for the past hour and you've been gone. And she's like, should I just go? He's like going through it, and he says maybe. Bro, Mark needs to get the Riz back. This was an L night. I know he got her to sleep with him. They were having a nice sleepover, whatever, but when you say maybe, that opens the door. You gotta just be like, no, you should stay, and be like serious about it. I think he bundled that situation. But once again, she came back to him after he freaked out at the Severance people, so maybe, it's always going to be in the cards. I don't know. We'll have to see in season 2 if the nursing retreat woman makes a return. I know her name. I'm just forgetting it at the moment. It's something simple too. So back in the office, there is a new protocol where Milchick walks everyone to their desk. And while he walks Dylan to his desk, Dylan is begging for details about his son. Obviously, he just woke up now back into the office after being woken up and seeing his son. So that's his literally reality, is just seeing his son, waking up. Now he's back in the office. He's freaking out. And we'll get into Dylan crashing out even further over his son. But yeah, he's going to crash out now for not telling his son's name at the dance party. Bites his arm. I mean, this was like rabid shit, bro. I don't know if this was even justified. In my opinion, I feel like Dylan was kind of freaking out too much. Went a little too far, in my opinion, but what are you going to do? So everyone has a nice little dance party. That scene's fun. Like, I've seen a couple edits of that scene, just like with music and stuff. That's a fun scene with Milchick dancing and Mark dancing and stuff. So hopefully there's more dance parties in the future. So Cobell has learned Grainer is dead, and she will meet with the board on evidence of reintegration. Spoiler alert, that meeting will not happen, I don't think, but the board, once again, just creepy people talking through a speaker and through Miss Casey, really awkward stuff there. I don't know what Cobell's position is. Is she like the manager of Mark's, like she's like the higher up of Mark, and then she reports to the board directly, or is there people in between? I guess we'll have to find out more. Granted, she, doesn't have this position anymore at the end of the season, so we'll see about that. Bert in the optics and design department is retiring. Not sure if this was a forced retirement. Doesn't seem like it, because his Audi's like, I'm done. It's time to stop working. Much to the chagrin of Irving, of course, who walks in on the retirement, is very sad. He rants to Bert about how he'll never see him again, what they had, blah, blah, blah. I mean, pretty sad stuff, because Irving obviously cares a lot about Bert, so it sucks to see them lose Bert and Bert just walk out of the operation like this. We'll never see him in the office again. That's my question, though. If they're always severed, maybe that'll come up again. It's like, Bert's still going to be severed because he's not going to have the operation. Like, they could just turn the switch on whenever they want. Seems like that, at least. So interesting to see if something happens with Bert season 2, or maybe they wake him up in outside world. I don't know. So after all this experience for Irving, he's been through a lot of trauma. His potential romantic partners retiring. He has now joined the rebellion. He says, let's fuck shit up after coming back. He was kind of the one who was behind the 8 ball with Dylan, Helly, and Mark being like, I don't want to go against the company. He was always kind of the goody two-shoes of the group, like never wanting to break the rules or anything, and loved the Kier experience, the museum they had. So now it's go time, because it's like that guy in Andor, when he finally decides to help them break out of prison, it's like, it's time now. I see the vision. This is a fucked up place. So, it's Alexa. The woman is Alexa, the nursing retreat lady, which is a funny name because of Amazon Alexa. Anyways, she comes back, or is like coming back to hang with Mark or pick up something, and he's like, why'd you not want to see me again? I don't I'm not interested in seeing Gemma at all. Like, we don't have to talk about her at all, or we can talk about her all you want, but it's not really about that. It's about him leaving up in the middle of the night and lying about it. But he just clearly does not see that at all, blatantly. So he tears up a photo of Gemma in front of Alexa. I thought this was a big L move, L Riz. Like, you're taking it too far. You're being very dramatic. It doesn't matter that much. Like, that's not what she's talking about. You don't even let her, like, address the issue. You're just like, it's always about Gemma, blah, blah, blah. I mean, obviously he's still hurting because of the loss of his wife, but I don't know. I felt like this was taking it a bit too far and really got himself into some trouble with Alexa. So I think that relationship is very on the rocks as of right now. And the last scene of this episode is the mind fuck of the season. He starts taping the photos together, and we see the face of his wife, and it's Miss Casey, the woman from the break room who followed Heliar around. Crazy. I mean, what does this even mean? How she's supposed to be dead? Is she one of the people that they talked about living at all times and not being dead? It's scary, bro. I don't know what this means, especially at the end of the season. Like, I don't know what the case will be with Miss Casey, with Mark. That's his wife, and now she's gone in the real. It's a car crash that supposedly killed her. But how is she alive in the office, and how is she severed? And I think she's one of the people that just sleeps in the severed office, wakes up. Like, I don't know. There's so many more questions than answers at this point. Crazy reveal, W twist. I had no idea. I mean, she's putting the picture back together. I thought it was gonna be Helly maybe, because Helly and Mark up to this point kind of had a romantic chemistry, back and forth a little bit. But it's Miss Casey, never expected. So, bravo to Ben Stiller, the showrunners. Crazy twist. So that's it for episode 7. Favorite of this episode, I'm giving Irving, classic dude who comes around to realizing what's good and joining the rebellion. I respect him. He obviously went through a lot too with Bert retiring. Least favorite, I'll give to Milchek. He antagonizes Dylan and Irving in this episode and probably forced Bert to retire, in my opinion. He makes a lot of mistakes of them getting angry. He makes a lot of mistakes on his own, being sloppy and leaving the book and stuff, and waking up Dylan at home and then getting angry with those people, even though he's the one making the mistakes that led to those problems. So, least favorite going to Milchek for episode 7. Episode 8 is titled "What's for Dinner?" Classic title for those people out there who get the reference. Anyways, Irving, we meet his Audi. He has a dog and paints a lot of stuff black while listening to death metal, which is pretty contrasting to what you'd expect for Irving's character. Like, he does read a book in front of like a nice building, but I don't know, I think he'd be a little bit more like chill, but I guess painting's his thing. That's why he always sees the paint when he's falling asleep, I think. So there's your connection there. I think of the storylines of everyone's Audi, I think Irving has the least interesting story. It's probably not a hot take, but I mean, just from what we've seen so far. This episode focuses a lot on Helly, or has a scene of Helly trying to meet the quota for the quarter. I mean, we haven't really talked about what their work is yet. I don't know what it means, what their work is, the macro data stuff they're doing. They just have to get rid of scary numbers. I mean, there's a million theories. It could be anything. I don't have a specific theory that I'm thinking it is. Obviously, this quarter, they haven't done jack shit for work, but Dylan, Irving, and Mark have all got their quota done. They're kind of chilling on the side office, leaving Helly alone. She's able to meet her quota for the quarter. And yeah, I thought that was pretty surprising, considering, especially her, she's out of the office a couple of days. They really never work, it seems. So good for Helly, good for the team for all doing their work and getting their quota. They should get a party for it. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. So, in other news, Casey has been forced to retire as Mark does another wellness session with her, forced by Cobell again. This is her last session with Mark, but now we know that these two characters are married in real life, and the real life Mark thinks that she's dead. I have no idea what's going on. There's some extra stuff going on here. Cobell is watching this, which, like, I can't with her. She's like, what is she doing? She's watching this play out. It's like, why? I think she has the hots for Mark. I said it. So after this wellness session concludes, Cobell sends her to the testing floor, which I think could be that place where where all of the innies like sleep, the ones who don't leave the office. I think maybe that's where they are all at, and they're testing something with them. I don't know. I think maybe they're testing like in real life connections to like what happens when you do the sever, like if it really works, because obviously Mark and Miss Casey have no recollection of each other. So maybe that's what they're testing, is like in real life relationships versus in real, that's maybe my theory there. Testing floor, I don't know. It's scary. I'm sure we'll learn more about that. Cobell is fired by the board due to Helly's attempted suicide that they tried to sweep under the rug, and her on the outside spending time at Mark's sister's place as the lactation consultant. I agree with this completely. I know that's right. Get the fuck out, Miss Cobell. Doing way too much, being weird, stocky. I actually agree with the board in this case scenario, although I'm not sure who takes over for her. Maybe Milchek's an easy one to do, but I don't know what her job actually is. Does she just report things? I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the higher ups at Lumen. We're kind of in the dark there, but for now, Cobell's out. So how about that, you little cure? What is it? The thing she has. Oh, the shrine. How about that? No more. See ya. Get out. So yeah, no more Miss Cobell at Lumen. So Helly and Mark are continuing their camaraderie together. A little fling is beginning in office. They say it's easy to care about each other. And then she is leaving the office and she kisses him before they leave. I thought that was somewhat surprising, at least on her end. You could see Mark kind of simping for her, but it seemed like she must have came around a lot in the time we're not seeing, because she's been pretty cold to all characters, especially Mark being the boss. So yeah, I think that was a pretty consequential kiss, but we'll see what ends up coming of it, especially since Mark's in real life wife is still alive. He doesn't know it, and he has the thing with Alexa, which I know is on the rocks, but I don't know. Mark's getting around. I mean, that's the third woman he's been with this season. Yeah. So we'll have to see what happens with Helly and Mark in the future. We see the waffle party that Dylan gets. They decide to give it to Dylan. Obviously, they have a plan in place to get out and put themselves into their real life people's bodies and see what their real life is like. So Dylan is the one left behind, even though he is probably the most to gain by being on the outside. So I thought it was an interesting choice, but he's just taking the sacrifice for the team, I guess. And we get to see this waffle party, which is absurd. You get to have the nice waffles with syrup. Those look fine. But then you're in a dark museum by yourself, and they have strippers and dancers. Like, it was very weird. This was very giving, like, the movie that I can never remember the name of with Tom Cruise. Fuck, I can never remember the name. I forget what it's called. You know what I'm talking about. It was very weird. And then he puts the plan in action, and he tries to figure out what to do, how to put them on. Once he's he leaves the stripper party, because I mean, it's easy to just disappear when no one's really paying attention if you're there. They're like all rubbing up on each other. It was weird. So he leaves to go to the control room where Grainer used to work, the security room, and he's able to flip the switch at the last second, leaving off yet another cliffhanger. I felt bad for people. Little old me here gets to watch all these episodes in a row, but people wait week for week. You got a couple years too, especially considering the end of episode 9. You had a lot to wait for. So yeah, cliffhanger. What will happen once Dylan flips the switch? So favorite of this episode, I'm giving to Dylan. Respect for sticking behind when he obviously has the most to lose and gain by being on the outside himself. So respect the sacrifice there. Least favorite, I'm giving Cobell. Still plotting something and deserved firing. She got clowned by the board, so least favorite goes to Cobell for episode 8. Finally, we have episode 9, the we are. In comparison to the you are, we now have the we are. So picking up right where we left off, the switch happened. Mark wakes up as his innie in the outside world. He's lost. Irving wakes up. He sees his painting that he's been doing on the outside world. Helly wakes up, and she's hanging with Natalie and is going to be giving a speech shortly. Now, there was mention of a gala or something that everyone was going to have to go to, Cobell and all them. And to see Helly hanging out with Natalie, the woman who speaks to the board, you already know shit's about to go down. So Mark is kind of trying to clue himself in on what's going on around him, trying to figure out who Devin is. He realizes it's his sister. Irving meets his dog. Nice for Irving. Like I said, Irving's storyline is kind of boring in my opinion. So Helly is with the senator who we knew early on. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but when Devin was doing a little bit of research on the woman she met, she found out that that woman is married to a senator who's trying to push severance for everything. And she meets Helly's with the senator's wife as well that Devin had met. She has a quote-unquote powerful father, and Helly was an experiment for severance. So what does that mean? I don't know what type of experiment, I know what type of experiment. She does the severance thing on her own. It's a powerful message because of what we later learn. So Mark is at this house party for Rickon's new book. He's so close to getting clues about himself, but just falling out of it at the last second and just missing the information. He calls Cobell, which only Cobell knows. Well, she's only known as Cobell in the Lumen office, so she knows now that he is not himself. He is the indie version of himself. Red flag alert. Whatever, though. Helly is an Egan. What the fuck? Biggest WTF moment of the season. It's up there between that or Miss Casey being Mark's wife. I don't know which one's more shocking, but it makes sense. She's the experiments, and now, what is going on? We don't really know the context of it. So Irving, on the outside, has actually been trying to track down other severed workers. Now, Irving's scenes are a little bit clunky at the end here because he's not talking at all because he's just by himself. So it's like we just have to kind of pick up on what they're putting down. So his outer self was trying to track down other severed workers, and of course he has the address for Bert. So now his innie is going to try and track down Bert to reclaim their love. And we find out at this gala, the goal is for everyone in the world to have a chip, which now I'm getting really concerned about this Lumen. Lumen could literally take over the world with this shit. And there's also literally a 0.00% chance that everyone in the world would ever get a chip and be mandated to do that. I could guarantee that right now. Would you want to get a chip? No. And even if they made it mandatory, people would uprise. I don't think that's possible, but I guess we'll have to see what happens. So at the house party, Cobell took the baby with her after Mark said Cobell to her. And then Mark, in one of the breaks in between Rick and reading the book, Mark tells Devin everything about what's going on. So now Devin is in the know about it. Finally, he gets the reveal at the end. His wife is Casey. He tells Devin she's still alive. Helly gets some truth out at the speech, but then the switch is flipped back. Irving knocks at Bert's door. And then the switch is hit. So how the fuck did you people wait for 3 years for this to come out, man? Sheesh. I'm going to be waiting 3 years for the next season 3 to come out after I watch season 2. But yeah, a lot to analyze here. I don't even know. It's like, Mark, what happens now? I don't know. I don't know where you go from here. Everyone has kind of exposed himself to the outer world. We'll see what happens in season 2 and when I review it. So favorite from this episode, I'm going with Mark. Got it all out there, pieced together the clues, ready to see the evolution of his character in season 2. Least favorite, once again, going to Cobell. Even after you're fired, you go to bat for the company. Sad life. She snitched on them and told Milchek. That's why Milchek's able to cut in on the thing. Scheming to the max still. So least favorite goes to Cobell for that episode. So that's a wrap. Season 1, episode by episode for Severance. Did you guys like this season so far? I'm high on it, but I'm not as high as others seem to be, at least on season 1. So we'll see if my opinion on the show changes in season 2. So if you're new to the channel, we had the most recent episode was Beautiful Boy movie review. And then we do everything here. We do TV shows, movies, sports. So I'm switching to just doing like a review format because everything's too hard to keep up with live besides Survivor. So weekly Survivor episodes. But then we'll have Daredevil Born Again. Once that season ends, there's only 3 episodes left in that season. White Lotus, there's only 2 episodes left in that season. Crazy shit happening all around. We'll be back for Severance season 2 as well. So yeah, this channel will always be active. Movie reviews, Joker 2 coming out at some point. Sting. Those will be the next movie reviews. So join the channel, man. We need people here. We don't need anyone here, but I'd like for everyone to see my views, or see my videos, see my views, react. Let's comment your thoughts. What are your thoughts on this season of Severance? What do you think of my theories? Are they off? Are they on? Don't spoil it because I'm about to watch season 2. But yeah, that'll wrap up Severance season 1 recap. Thanks for sticking along to the end of the video. As always, be easy, y'all.